Good late afternoon. Thanks for joining me. I spent a good part of this afternoon wandering around and really came up with some stuff I hope to share with you about how to flip your inner storm to calm. If you've ever wondered, is that possible? If you have, let me know in the comments. It turns out it's pretty easy to get from here to there. And I guess I just wanted to start off by saying, hi, I'm Joel.foner, the Possibilities Coach, and I'm here to help you turn your impossible into possibilities. So let's start off a little bit with thinking about a story. There's this great story. It's about the empty boat. The empty boat is this fisherman who went to paint his boat, got it all nicely done up. It happened to be a foggy night, brought it out on the lake to check it out. And as he's paddling around with his rowboat, gets rammed in the side of the boat, like boom, in the side of the boat. Starts screaming at the idiot who did it, so inconsiderate, for hitting his brand new boat. Turns around to find out there's nobody there. There's absolutely nobody there. Well, how many times has that happened to us? Where something happens, and part of what brings us to mind is I was just out driving, right? Out driving. This happens all the time. You're driving along, maybe you stop at an intersection, and somebody's, hey, Sammy, how are you? I just got back from running around and thought, let me talk a little bit about this. You stop at an intersection and you take a look and you realize, oh, well, they're stopped and they shouldn't be stopped, and you honk. Or you're the person in front and you can't go anywhere. And they're honking and honking and honking and you're sitting there. Well, there's nobody in the boat, just like there was nobody in the empty boat before. The fisherman turns around and looks and there's an empty boat. What's he yelling at? Nothing. And so I thought I would explore a little bit more about what are all the different ways, or what are some of the different ways that we end up in front of empty boats and don't even realize it. Well, things like we're in work and we're talking to somebody and we end up with a conversation where somebody is basically saying, oh, no, what you're saying is not important. The thing that I'm saying is the really important thing. Well, okay, we could get angry about that. Or we could realize that maybe we're talking to an empty boat. The person is doing this for their own reasons. They have their own perspectives, and they are just not really thinking about anything else. That's a lot of what happens in the world, is people are looking at multiple perspectives. They're looking at their own thing. What's another way this happens? What about the somebody doesn't call you back, or they don't text you back, or they forget to do something that you think is really important? Well, that really important thing, maybe they do care about it, but the story we made up in our head is, oh, they rammed our boat. Well, maybe they didn't really ram our boat. Maybe that wasn't even really part of the picture in the first place. Maybe if we could walk through the world with this idea of an empty boat mentality, that we realize, we get rammed, okay, it's probably an empty boat. Let's just move on. That we could actually have a better way of getting through the day. So, I guess the first tip would be, remember that most all of everything you run into is an empty boat. And let's step up, step back. Okay, it happened. Then we can go on. Another thing that's kind of funny about the empty boat is it brings forward this idea that people do things without knowing why they do them. You might be thinking, well, how is it even possible that somebody can do something without knowing why they do it? It turns out it's really possible. How much of the day are we actually paying attention to everything that goes on? We're really thinking about everything that goes on. How much of the day are we going through the day and thinking really closely, how am I reacting to this? What am I saying? Do I really mean it? Well, maybe we're not really so conscious of the why behind what we're doing. And if we're not really thinking about the why behind what we're doing, well, then it's just like the empty boat. Somebody says something, they do something that you think is like after you. They're not even really there. They're thinking of their own things. They're coming from their own perspective. They're still in the last meeting they were in. They're still in the last phone call. They're still dealing with the last thing that happened, whatever. And so there's this concept that people can do things without knowing why. And if we keep that in mind, then we can be a little bit less reactive to stuff that's going on. Hey, Andy, great to see you. And words of fire? Awareness. Wow. Yeah. Thank you. What we talked about a little bit at the beginning was this idea of this empty boat story. The fisherman who took his new boat out, or refreshed boat out, and got rammed by what he thought was somebody. Started screaming at the somebody, turned around to find out it was empty boat. So this empty boat thinking can be really helpful in going through the world with less stress. And if you remember that, it's an easy way to flip from storm to calm. There's a third one that I wanted to bring up a little bit, which is, we, I think, spend a lot of time trying to change the past. Ever notice that? You try and change the past. Something happened. And we're running around all wound up in angst, always trying to change the past. Well, here's the funny part. Does anybody here think you can change the past? Feel free to toss into the comments. If you think you can change the past, please tell me how. That would be an awesome thing to have to know how to do. But if we do come to the place of saying, well, maybe we can't change the past, well, what is it accomplishing to spend all this time and all this energy trying to fret about changing the past? What are we actually accomplishing? Yeah, Words of Fire says, not one of my superpowers. Yeah, I sure wish it was one of mine. I wish it was one of mine. I think we all do. But if we can't change the past, then what are we left with? Well, maybe what we want to focus on is not how to change the past, but what's the next step we're going to do to change the future? So my third tip is this idea of, let's not focus on changing the past. Just step forward into changing the future. Because the past is the past. And there are a bunch of folks who have written about this. There's a guy, Eckhart Tolle, who has written a lot. And one of the thoughts he had that I really like, well, I mean not like, but have resonated with, is this idea that much of pain comes from non-acceptance of reality. Pain comes from non-acceptance of reality. What could that possibly mean? Well, it's I think really connected to this idea of the past, that if we fully accept reality, then we don't argue with the past, right? I mean, a lot of what we spend our time doing is we're trying to argue with the past. Yeah, we're going to make it different. If I yell enough, it won't have happened. It doesn't actually do anything. I mean, we feel good, right? It gets the endorphins going. It gets all that stuff happening. It doesn't actually change anything. So I guess my third tip as an easy way to flip this stuff is, don't try and change the past. Change the future. And maybe we can't change the future all in one big jump. You can't jump 1,000 yards. Well, okay, that's okay. But to the point of somebody asked earlier in the group, is it too late to start? And I said, well, it's never too late. You can start. And you can get where you want to go. I wish I could remember where I saw this, but a phrase that's a 100-foot walk has more in common with a 5K run than sitting on the couch. We can change the future. We can't change the past. And so those are kind of three things. The first one is, the empty boat, how that affects how we think about things, how we can react to things. The idea that people don't necessarily really know why they do what they do. So we shouldn't be really blaming if they're not even really conscious of why they did it. Well, then how can that be a conscious act towards us? And the third is this idea of change the future, not the past. And if we can work from that perspective, if we can live from that perspective, maybe we can make a big impact on the world in changing the way we all are together. So thanks very much for being here. I hope you've enjoyed it. Hope to see you again tomorrow.